about why Americans can't afford starter homes. We're seeing starter homes are disappearing across America. It is becoming impossible to buy a home these days. We're seeing big institutions come in, buying up entire neighborhoods. Some people are saying this is all part of the great reset of you'll own nothing and be happy. We're seeing what's happened with the California wildfires. We're already seeing developers coming in and giving offers to homeowners trying to come in and buy up all the land. And we're seeing all smart LA in 2028 for Los Angeles. And, we saw Gavin Newsom dancing. I don't know if you saw the video, but he was dancing when he's talking about rebuilding LA and all the great plans he has. But again, it used to be the American dream that you would own your own home, and that was a very good thing for retirement. If you could retire and you don't have to worry about a mortgage or you don't have to pay about paying rent, because think of it like this: if you're paying $2,000 or $1,500 or in rent right now, in 30 years you're going to be paying because of inflation. It sounds like a lot now, but you'll be paying $5,000 or $10,000 in retirement, and many people won't be able to afford it. So let's go ahead and react to this story here.
Starter homes are disappearing from the United States. In the early 19...
Also, too, let me know if the volume from my microphone and the volume from the videos is good, because sometimes the volume on the microphone might be very low and the sound on the video might be too high.
Starter homes are disappearing from the United States. In the early 1980s, as many as 40% of the new homes built were considered...
Let's go ahead and pause that chart there. We'll go ahead and adjust this here. Wow. So starter home construction, the US share of new homes below 14,000 square feet. We can see here, it was around 40% in the 1980s, and it has plummeted to below 10% now in 2024.
Entry level. By 2023, just 9% fit the criteria.
Give it another 20 years and literally no young person will be able to afford to purchase a home, period.
Meanwhile, a slowdown is mounting in the home building industry, which could contribute to the ongoing...
Well, it's about to boom in Los Angeles and California.
...decline of the starter home.
Both housing starts and building permits, which are an indicator of future construction, have slowed down this fall, and it's not just seasonal.
There are over 3 million potential first-time home buyers in the country. They're up against high home prices that keep rising.
What you're starting to see are mini price bubblets in markets that are an hour, 2 to 3 hours from major metropolitan cities.
It is such an unusual market because we have an all-time low of first-time home buyers, but an all-time high of all cash buyers.
So where did all the starter homes go?
It's probably also because, in the 80s, a lot of, kids played outside, where now everybody does everything inside. A lot of people want another room for if they're working from home, a study. They want to have 2 living rooms. They're trying to keep up with the Joneses. So houses are also getting bigger because people are getting more and more appliances and spending more and more time inside rather than going outside.
A starter home is typically modest in size and price.
It's the most affordable home in any market. If you're in the Midwest, maybe it's in the $100,000 range. If you're in California, a starter home might be in the $400,000.
Peter says with remote work, he sees a trend emerging where young people will be buying inexpensive homes in small towns. Yeah, if you can work from home, like I do, it's great working from home. I don't live in a big city. I live in regional, that's what you call it in Australia, or rural in US. Keeps your costs down. And with the way crime is right now, I would not want to be living in a major capital city.
To me, a starter home used to be a smaller condo, a smaller space, and someone would upgrade maybe after 5 years as they get married or have a family and want to move. But now we're actually seeing that most people are buying their first home as a single family residence and really planning on staying in place.
America's home builders are making fewer of these kinds of units.
If you look at the number of single-family starter homes, those defined as being 1,400 square feet or smaller, we used to supply anywhere between...
You can see this chart here. Yes, it is declining rapidly. And this is what they should do. They do need more affordable options. That's what they're going to try to do with California. Also, too, they should cut regulation. They should let people, if they want to have a tiny home, You guys may think it's a bad idea to live in a tiny home, but it's better to have something rather than nothing than living on the street and being homeless. But a lot of these councils, a lot of these estates, they want to keep their house prices elevated and don't want to approve any construction of affordable housing.
400 and 500,000 units a year.
Over the past decade, builders have put up less than 100,000 homes each year.
Really, by far, the number one reason is the increasing difficulty that many builders have in dealing with zoning regulations.
Zoning laws are set at the local level. These laws can determine the size of each lot in a neighborhood. They can also specify how far a structure is set back from the property line, how tall it is, or how many units are on site. In many cases, these laws create an opportunity for local residents to challenge new development. The residents often raise concerns like overcrowding of schools and wear and tear on local roads.
A lot of this has to do with density restrictions within local communities. They may not want a townhouse or a condo community coming in, but they absolutely will welcome a single family community.
Because they don't want their property values going down.
Zoning codes are found all around the country. The most restrictive ones are often found in major cities.
Many builders...
See, Washington, New York. Well, if they're all for, the poor instead of the rich, why are they not approving affordable housing in New York, Washington? We can see here Seattle, Tampa, Miami, Detroit.
Are not leaving money on the table. They are just simply unable to build, or it's become so expensive to build that they can only build high-end single family and high-end multifamily.
Given the high price of land, labor, materials, it's very difficult for big home builders to build the entry-level homes.
Well, that's a good point, and that's true with all the expensive permitting process, with all the huge red tape, bureaucracy, all the councils and the mayors trying to fill their pockets. It's making it very, very expensive for builders, and they simply won't make enough profit to build these tiny homes. We need to make it profitable and easy and less regulation for these builders to come in and build these starter homes.
Are a couple who specialize, like D.R. Horton, which has an express homes division which specializes in starter homes. But for medium-sized builders, it's just very expensive in order to pencil all the costs they have and make it affordable to that lower-end buyer.
As a result, home builders and first-time buyers are targeting further-flung locations.
We've definitely seen a trend toward purchasing a home further from the urban core. So you do see a lot of new construction in suburbia and exurbia.
Home values are now rising most rapidly in low-density and rural areas. Experts say that relaxing these codes could lead to higher levels of home building and preserve affordability.
For example, in San Antonio, there's some builders that are building sub 1,000 square feet single-family detached homes, right? Which would have been almost unthinkable just a few years ago. So the market is reacting, but its response mechanism is really limited because of the rules of the game.
And so that's why they need to deregulate.
Some areas with less restrictive zoning codes are welcoming many newcomers. For an example, see Metro Atlanta.
Home is in Atlanta now. I'm currently in Decatur, Georgia, which is right outside of the perimeter, so I have easy access to the city. It gives a little bit more of suburban-ish kind of feel. It's just the culture, the energy, the aesthetic, the environments, a more elevated experience in day-to-day living, honestly.
Lillian Mantaya is a filmmaker and entrepreneur. She was in line to buy a home in the Baltimore area in 2024, but that plan fell through. Since then, she's moved to Atlanta to live with her sister and come up with a new plan.
I did grow up in Baltimore. I gave Baltimore a shot in my adulthood with my children, and I did the 9 to 5 and, attempted to buy a house there and everything. But Baltimore wasn't providing just the lifestyle, resources, community that is needed for me to thrive. And Atlanta has been able to kind of just support me more.
Experts say that more dense forms of housing could have helped first-time buyers, particularly in crowded areas.
We do know that local communities are trying to address the lack of housing inventory in pretty unique ways. So accessory dwelling units is certainly a popular approach right now. That's one solution, but I think we need to be looking at adaptive reuse as well. So looking at vacant hotel motels, looking at vacant residential malls, and how do we bring residential housing units into those areas?
Much of the new construction since 2020 is in luxury apartments, with units that are not for sale.
The recent boom in
That's right. So because everything's becoming so expensive, instead of them making affordable, smaller homes, they're making luxury high-end homes, which they really do need an option for that young couple or that young man or woman to just get into the housing market, start building equity in their home, and then they can upgrade from there.
Multifamily construction has been on the higher luxury end, but it's easier for multifamily developers to get in and pencil that many apartments because they're renting them, and rents have been very high.
Finances are a big barrier for first-time buyers. The premium paid to buy a home.
Let's have a look at this chart here. Well, okay, buying versus renting. So we can see here estimated mortgage payments versus rents. Now, because interest rates are so high, it is just so much more expensive to own a home right now compared to renting. And what you've had is you've had home prices in some areas double, but not only the home prices have doubled, but your interest rates have gone from 3% to 7 or 7.5%. So house prices have doubled. On top of that, repayments because of interest costs have doubled. And this is simply unsustainable, everyone. And why I think in 2025, we're going to see a big housing correction. I'm not saying it's going to crash 50%, but we've got to see a big correction in the market because people simply cannot qualify for a home loan anymore.
Home has increased sharply relative to renting over the past decade. The increase.
That's right, Jim. Cost of land, labor, material regulations is too hard to see a solution. Well, that's why they need to deregulate and they need to incentivize people to get into the construction industry.
Increases in home prices have also outpaced increases in wages. As a result, home sales are down across many markets, and the median age of the typical first-time home buyer has climbed to 38.
Wow, 38 to buy your own home. You've nearly halfway through your working career and you're just getting into the housing market.
That's up from age 29 in 1981.
Just thinking about
Molly Brown, she got to say a mall house sounds really cool. They are converting a lot of malls into apartments now as well. And that's maybe something they could look at doing more. You might not like it, but it gives more options and it gives them options for some people that just want to get into the housing market.
all of the headwinds that a 30-year-old may have, like student loan debt and car loans and credit card debt, and then they have rising rent. And so keeping that all in mind, it's hard to save for a down payment when housing affordability is really out of reach.
The problem is you have the most demand on the low end of the market because affordability is so rough right now, but you also have the least supply on the low end of the market.
The average price of homes has increased rapidly too. Nationwide, home prices have climbed over 52% between January 2020 and October 2024. Adding to the burden, mortgage rates have returned to their standard historical range, near 7%. Homeowners with a mortgage are paying 29% more than they would if they rented the same house.
That's absolutely insane, everyone. So you're probably also getting a lot of people that are just renting right now, waiting for prices to come down or waiting for interest rates to come down until they get into the market. And I think that could be a play. I don't see housing prices in general. Now remember, some markets will still skyrocket because the US isn't just one market. The whole country doesn't go up in one line together. Some states will do good, and in those states there's markets within towns, there's different markets. There's a good part of town, the bad part of town, but I don't see a big housing boom in 2025.
Dynamics like that are shutting out all but the highest income Americans out of the market, at least on average.
We're seeing first-time home buyers come into the market using inheritance, using 401k or stocks, cashing those out, combining all of these resources, and actually making an all-cash purchase.
Wow, okay. So people selling their stocks, they're using their 401k. In Australia, we call it superannuation. They're using their retirement funds to get a house. Now imagine if we had a housing crash like 2008 where they put all their eggs in one basket, or maybe something happens in that town where they're brought. Maybe crime goes up through the roof. Maybe there's a natural disaster like in Los Angeles, and that one asset that they have plummets. This is a recipe for disaster. Yes, that's right.
Investors are buying homes too, but economists saw their shares jump to an all-time high in 2020.
Wow, look at this. Share of single-family homes purchased by investors. Now, what I think they should leave investors to buying big apartment complexes. I think, for big hedge funds, I don't think they should be able to buy single-family homes because nobody can compete with them. They've got unlimited amounts of capital, like BlackRock that has $12 trillion under management. You've got other big hedge funds, superannuation funds in Australia. Leave them to buying big apartment buildings. They don't need to buy single-family homes because at the end of the day, people do need a roof over their head. It is an essential need. So they should leave it to mum and dad investors. Maybe they can have a few investment properties. But I don't think you should let one institution come into a neighborhood and buy tens of thousands of single-family homes.
24. Still, they make up a tiny fraction of the overall housing stock.
The issue of large-scale investors is really not an issue. If you look at their share of the market, it's only 1% to 2%. However, if you look within fast-growing markets, particularly those that are affordable, and in the South, those entities are making it a little bit more difficult for buyers to purchase. Having said all that,
that's right, because there's a better yield there in the affordable markets. And this, again, is worrying trend. Yes, they're saying it's only 1% or 2%, but that is growing. But like he said, it's much a high concentration in housing markets where it is cheaper because there's a better rental yield, better yield on your cash.
If there was a normal amount of supply and we didn't have the shortage, this would not be really an issue.
With elevated prices on the market, today's buyers may need to rely on outside help to finance a home.
I think it's increasingly difficult to buy that first home if you don't have help. You know, in a more affordable market, it's $400,000. That means you have to come up with $80,000 in down payment.
Okay, let's have a look at here. 2025 home price $400,000, down payment $80,000, 7.14% interest. Your monthly payments $2,173. Total interest $480,000. Total out of pocket $862,000 for a $400,000 house. And this is in the affordable, cheap areas. There's many areas which are much more expensive than this.
If you assume the typical conventional loan, it's really difficult to come up with that down payment. So we do see in the data increasingly more consumers getting help, whether that's from their parents or from down payment assistance programs.
There are over 2,400 down payment assistance programs nationwide. Depending on your income and where you live, the aid can be substantial.
I haven't purchased a home yet, and I've been in the process of purchasing a home. But being in this process, I definitely have more of a optimistic, perspective with home buying now. And I just talked to a realtor here, and she even told me that you are able to purchase a home even with a credit score of 500 and something.
What? So they're telling people with low credit scores, go ahead and buy the most expensive housing, or the highest inflated housing bubble in US history, close to 2008. Oh my goodness, they're telling people with low credit scores to buy. I don't know, does this sound familiar, everyone? I think I've watched this movie before. What do you guys think?
So I think it's just a matter of taking the initiative and knowing that you can be a homeowner.
Regulation at all levels of government affect how homes are built. Experts say they're holding back new construction.
This crisis is worsened by various factors, including rising construction costs, regulatory burdens, and limited availability of buildable land.
There's definitely excessive regulation, a lot of inefficient local zoning.
The zoning codes really originated nearly a century ago, and it made sense at the time. However, since then, there's been an increasing thicket of layers that have made it increasingly difficult for builders. This is sort of the concern, unfortunately, with policy, is sometimes you have to think about in advance things that can go wrong. So think about zoning. It made sense in the 1900s, it began in New York City. It made sense if you needed meat packing plants to be a little bit away from residential areas, but you take that to an extreme and out of New York City and into middle America, and then it causes problems.
Regulation at this point can make up 25% of the builder's cost to build that home. And
What? 25% of the builder's home is just all red tape, bureaucracy. It's all the councils, it's all the cities taking money for themselves. That is absolutely insane.
there is a lot of talk of deregulation, especially under the new Trump administration.
Until more housing is built, prices are expected to keep marching upward quickly.
The willingness and desire for homeownership amongst renters, particularly younger renters under the age of 35, is very high. However, the problem is the obstacles are also just as high.
That's right, everyone. So there you have it. Why Americans can't find starter homes. A lot of regulatory issues, a lot to do with high interest rates. House prices are at the highest levels. Interest rates are at the highest levels. And we saw they're trying to get some people with low credit scores to buy houses at all-time highs. So that is a recipe for disaster. I'll read some of you guys' messages in the chat. They could have a law that says any individual entity, including its subsidiaries, can only own, say, 100 housing units. I think it was a huge apartment complex. It's not a big issue, but yeah, if you're buying 100 or 1,000 single-family homes in smaller cities, that is a big issue. Jim says could play out like the UK from 1996, 25% drop in price, 50% when inflation adjusted. Peter, imagine if BlackRock wasn't allowed to own one entire residential housing block. Yeah, that's right. So I think we're definitely going to see a big housing correction in the US. These, again, house prices in some areas have doubled, but the interest costs have gone up 250%. People simply aren't going to qualify. Once the big hedge funds see that there's no more money they can squeeze out of this housing bubble, they'll go ahead and start offloading homes, and that's when I think we'll start to really see things correct. But again, they need to adjust the zoning laws and get rid of all that red tape that makes it much cheaper to build affordable homes, and somehow make it profitable for these builders and incentivize these builders to build these starter homes, because right now they're not incentivized to build these starter homes.